down for Dale gets it.
So the post office.
Right.
Japanese ones, then there's like a pair of, that's like some images, whatever it was we gave them.
Oh, okay.
So maybe the thing. I'll, if you want, I can look into.
Yeah, that'd be great.
5?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I want to say something. $10 for the post
It would be nice to maybe get 6, but we have one for the mayor.
Okay.
I was wondering why they fear the most. I'm not sure.
Let you know. We'll give them a good 1 or 2. That plus the.
That's why you do it.
I think we need to order them. There's like 6 days, we just still make
Just to have that once a day kind of business.
No, I took 20 minutes for some of them, just kind of.
we used to give them out.
Yeah, well, we took them off, right?
To you.
What is the, once Tommy got the change? Tommy Thompson. Yes.
Is it dinner? Is it dinner?
Yeah, it's a dinner store.
All right, I'll do $5.
We're still on vacation.
No, we don't see enough of them.
Who's gonna attend?
Bonnie and them. As long as they don't serve us chicken.
No. It's
Same thing.
That's why we don't sign up for lunch, because there's so much chicken. We have the-
You just, I know. That's why I said I'm not boycotting. I will boycott. So Dale gets these.
That's what they
Get my digital memorial out.
He's out of town.
They got some reason.
I'll see him Thursday. This week. It's the
29th.
Yeah,
You have until the 30th to turn it into Christmas clothes. I'm down.
I'm just assuming he's probably gonna do that.
Did he do it last year?
Ready?
Something else.
No. No. Okay.
The time is 7 o'clock, and we will call to order regular city council meeting for October 26th, 2015, here in council chambers. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. DeGenova?
Here.
Mr. Brush?
Here.
Mr. Schaefer? Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here.
I move to excuse Councilman Schaefer.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 2 is invocation, and tonight's will be given by John Powers from Ohio Wesleyan, and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll all please stand with me.
O God of every faith and every face, we pause to seek your grace for this good hour. We bring to this deliberation all of who we are as a community that cares, our highest hopes, our deepest fears, our broadest insecurities, our brightest selves, our narcissistic core, our worst skepticism, our fondest ideals. This is what we have to work with tonight. Any miracles would be appreciated, especially if you could help us all see that we are all in this together, and that what comes out of this meeting and meetings to come will be things that we all have to live with together for years and years to come. This is our confession tonight. This is our affirmation tonight. Blessed be. Shalom, salam, namaste, shanti, shanti, amen.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Item 4 is the approval of the motion summary for the council work session held October 5th, 2015.
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mrs. Keller, a second by Mr. Jones. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Abstain.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. And then we also have the approval of motion summary for the regular meeting of council held October 12th, 2015, as recorded and transcribed.
I move for approval.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mr. DeGenova. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 5 is the consent agenda. Ms. Elaine, if you'll please read this into the record.
Item A, acceptance of the motion summaries of the Sister City Advisory Board meetings held April 14th and July 14th, 2015. Item B, acceptance of the motion summary of the Airport Commission meeting held July 16th, 2015.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 6 is time set aside for letters, petitions, or public comments for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward? As you take a seat, if you will give us your name and address for the record, I would appreciate it.
My name is Mark McHenry, and I live on Glengarry Drive,
I need the actual.
21 Glengarry Drive.
Thank you.
Okay. So, just coming here today again, talking about the new development real estate signs. I'm not sure if anyone saw the movie. It wasn't the greatest movie in the world. It was Minority Report from a few years ago. What it was basically they could predict, people murdering people in advance, and then they would go and stop the crime before it even happened. Not that I want to compare murder with the code of the city, but I can predict that next weekend, which is, from my understanding, the weekend that they've been told they can't do it again, they will continue doing this. The way just a logical person would see this was, they put them, just for anybody that doesn't know, they put them up every single weekend. We're talking about the Wayne Homes developments over on the east side. And what they do is they want it to be such a permanent thing almost. They leave the sticks in the ground and just kind of put the signs over them. So they have been doing this on weekends since April. It is completely illegal to do this. I had talked to the manager of the local place over there, and she basically almost laughed off the idea that the city would do anything to actually enforce this. So this weekend, if I'm understanding right, October 31st was when they'd been given the warning not to do it anymore. They've been given very generous warning. So hopefully that will be taken care of. I'm assuming that we need to make a few additional calls, because with those sticks out there, they are going to put them up once again. I hate that I even have to come here and talk about this. I've called the city without coming to city council. I mean, it's something that I don't really want to be coming here and speaking. But I'll continue to do it. I mean, if we want, if we're not going to enforce it, I can get Columbus Media involved. We can get Tito Ramos in here doing a story about it. I can do letters to the editor. All I really want is them, we've given them permits to build the houses in the city. So, I really want the code enforced by the city. That's really all I've got.
Okay, thank you very much. I know letters did go out to all of the realtors also, because they were talking about the last meeting I was at, so we'll see what happens this weekend.
I'll be back in 2 weeks if they don't do it.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Just out of curiosity, Carolyn, what was the response from the realtors that you spoke to?
They were a little surprised, but it sounded like they were going to adhere to it. Time will tell.
Thank you.
And item 7 is committee reports. Mr. Jones?
HPC meeting this Wednesday, 7 o'clock here in City Council chambers.
Okay, thank you.
You.
Mrs. Keller?
I don't know if anyone has had a chance to stop by the spray and play at Veterans Park, but it is coming along wonderfully. The play toy is currently being constructed, but it's probably 75% complete, maybe even a little bit more. The buildings are going up, they're putting stone on. You can really start to see the actual layout of the park in the amphitheater. Last time Jackie and I stopped over there, they were putting the footers in for the dinosaur prints on the bottom of the splash pad, so it's really coming together and very exciting. So stop out there and tell everybody what a great job they're doing. They're moving along so quickly. It's so exciting.
Oh, good. Mr. DeGenova?
Yes, the revolving loan fund met last week, and item 8 we'll be voting on this evening. I hope I get your support on that. And Shade Tree meets tomorrow night at 7 o'clock here in the council chambers, and I have another meeting after that at 8 o'clock with some residents on Stratford. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Rush?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Hellinger?
Airport Commission met. Not much to discuss other than the runway extension will continue to move forward into 2016.
Good. All right.
George, are they expecting to break ground on that project?
Yes.
In spring of 2016? Great.
George, I have one question. Have they made any decisions on having an air show next year or the following year? We'll need that for budgeting.
Yeah, we'll leave that for budget.
Okay.
We were going to hold
We'll need
off until 17 because of the runway extension.
because
It'll still be under construction.
Construction.
Thank you. Item 8 is consideration of resolution 15-50. Clerk will please read this into the record.
Resolution number 15-50, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a revolving loan fund RLF loan agreement with Precision Tower Products LLC for the purpose of purchasing land and equipment at their new development site on Pittsburgh Drive.
Thank you. Mr. Hughes?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. What we have before us this evening is a continuance of a project that we worked on earlier this year. As you remember, we granted a 100% 15-year CRA tax abatement to the Precision Tower Products project. This is a request for a revolving loan fund loan for the same project. The revolving loan fund committee recently reviewed the application and materials that complement that application and came up with the recommendation that is before you tonight. The final meeting of that committee was on October 19th, and they originally came up with a recommendation that we then negotiated and came back to with a second recommendation. So hence there's a change in your resolution and fact sheet that was submitted later today. So what this is, it is a recommendation for a loan of $500,000 with an interest rate of 3% for 10 years, 10-year term. The company is to pay all closing costs and origination fees for the loan. They also are committing to hiring 20 employees for the project, specifically for the loan. The CRA actually was a little bit higher than that, if you remember. 51% of those employees do have to be low to moderate income, so that's essentially about 11. They have to make at least the attempt to do so. And that all will be stated actually in the documentation for the loan that we'll go to closing with if council so chooses to move forward with the loan package and gives the city manager, Mr. Homan, authorization to enter into such an agreement.
So Sean, I'm assuming they have to be LMI at the time that they're hired. For what amount prior to that? How is that determined? I mean, is it like an average of the preceding X number of years, or?
It's based on CDBG's predetermined levels of what LMI is for our county.
Okay.
And it's county, it's not specific to the city. I can tell you right now, I think a household of one person is something of the nature of $39,000 per year. So it's
But I guess my question is, let's say someone had been making 50 at some job and then had been unemployed for 3 weeks and then gets this job. Are they considered LMI because they had no income for that period immediately preceding being hired, or is it?
That's a good question. I do not.
You can follow
Yeah,
up later. I don't need to know.
Yeah, well, we can follow up on that. I'll find out for you. Absolutely. Essentially, this money will go toward, I apologize, I should have stated this. The money will go towards the purchase of the property for the project. That property is on Pittsburgh Road. And it also will go towards some of the machinery and equipment that will be obviously utilized, housed in that facility. Right now, I think we're at an 80,000 square foot facility, possibly 70 to 80 to be determined. But that's how the money will be utilized for the specific financing.
Would the applicant like to say anything this evening?
Well, I just hope that you can approve this loan. We're hoping to move on this. We have an option to buy the land that expires November 30th. So we're kind of running out of time. But, and we hope to then break ground sometime in the spring. So hopefully it'll all come together.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
I just have a comment that Shane left out, that there's also 2 personal guarantees. Personal guarantee from the principals and the corporation.
Right.
And the applicant is well aware of that.
Right.
Okay. And any other comments, I make a motion to.
Before you do that, can I have you state your name and address for the record? I apologize.
Yes, my name is Bob Archer, and my address is 7115 Hawksbeard Drive in Westerville.
Well, one other comment too, Bob hasn't mentioned or Shane, is that principal of this, one of the schools is also owns B&P and Sky Climbers. So there are going to be 3 buildings in a row.
Right.
Out there.
Okay, and before you do, Mr. Holman has
Just
a comment.
one comment. You'll recall, Council, that we have been using RLF dollars for what we call waiver projects. A lot of the facade projects downtown, the wayfinding projects, and other projects of that nature we've been using these monies for. So the $500,000 that we're committing tonight, we won't be able to use for other projects. Obviously, as that gets paid back, we'll be reprogramming those monies. So as part of our 2016 budget submission, we'll provide you with a revised approach as we're going to get some of those projects accomplished. The wayfinding project that's currently being undertaken right now will not be affected. It was really kind of the perimeter stuff that we're going to be talking about. So we'll provide you more information about that as part of the budget.
In addition to that, also, we get refunded more money in June or July of 2016, so that kind of will balance itself out, hopefully.
I think we're right now
600?
taking in about $17,000 a month. Does that sound right, Dean?
It's more.
For payment on. Yeah, I think for payment on current outstanding.
Okay. Any other questions by council? What is the wish of council?
I move for the adoption of resolution 1550 as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. DeGenova, a second by Mr. Brush. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries.
Before we go on, I'd just like some housekeeping on resolution 0949 for Darren on the revolving loan fund. We want to make some changes on that, and I don't know, are you going to get with Darren or?
49 is
0949, yes. That's on
The guidelines.
The guidelines on
Yeah.
the revolving
Well,
loan fund.
We can future meeting.
Oh, yeah, we can make changes, but that's not on the agenda.
No.
No, no, no.
It's like I'm looking
No,
at it, I don't see it.
Just, I don't want it to get by the wayside because it's a major concern that the committee has.
Okay, we can
As a
put it on.
chairperson, I want to make sure I told
Does
him.
Sean know what the changes are?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get with Sean tomorrow.
If he doesn't, I'll refresh him.
We'll get that taken care of, Joe.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, council.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good
All
luck.
right, good luck.
Okay, item 9 is consideration of ordinance 15-51. If the clerk please read this into the record.
Resolution number 15-51, a resolution declaring the intent of the City of Delaware to appropriate property of the Shipley Family Revocable Trust, Wickham Family Trust, Robin Leslie Wickham, James D. Wickham, Thomas C. Hargraves, and James D. Hargraves at the addresses listed below for public use for roadway improvements.
Mr. Schulman?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this resolution would be the first step in the appropriations process. I'd like to give you some background about how we got to where we are today. The city has been seeking to buy this land to build a bike path. There are 6 owners, as you can see in the title of the ordinance. They are involved in a completely unrelated piece of litigation amongst each other, trying to figure out how to divide up their interest in this property. And it's in a long-standing litigation, completely unrelated to our situation, but they don't get along. And they're not geographically located near each other. So I don't know if any of them showed up here today. In our packet, we included a letter that we sent to all the owners inviting them to come if they had any comments. Basically, hey, and it's not a cartoon. I'm distracted. I'm really sorry. I'll look over here and keep reading. Mesmerized by Disney Channel.
Jackie, your grandchildren,
It's like a fire or something. Okay, so anyway, we sent a letter to. When was Disney Channel on this TV?
the other day we had it on for.
Oh, gotcha. So we sent a letter. Basically, we've been trying to buy this property from them for a long period of time. The feedback we've gotten from the owners is not that they did not want to sell it to us, but we've never been able to get all 6 of them to agree to sign the paperwork. So we sent the letter that you saw kind of in a last-ditch effort to say, hey, no one said they don't want to buy it, but we can't just sit here and keep waiting for this case to get resolved. So let us know if you have a problem with us appropriating this using the quick take method. We did get feedback in response to our letter. 2 of the owners called and said, we want to sign right now, send us the contract, but I needed all 6. So I told them, I'd love to sell it to you, but I need all 6. 2 other ones spoke to Tom and our engineering department. They also indicated they wanted to sell, but they weren't, at least one of them wasn't getting along with the other members, so I haven't been able to broker a deal. So I talked to the attorney who kind of represents definitely one, but has another owner, and they basically said, we'd like to sell it to you. We agreed that it might be the easiest way to go, which would be to start the appropriations process, and then we can haggle over price through that system. So it's a weird situation in that I haven't spoken to all 6 directly, but I get the sense that it's not a hostile taking, but it just might move this thing over a little faster than waiting for that litigation to resolve itself. This is a small sliver of a really large tract. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about discussions with the owners. Again, I've talked to 2, and Tom's talked to 2, and I've seen correspondence, but no one who I've spoken to has had any problem with the city buying it, just that they can't get all 6 of them to agree together to sell it.
And is anyone in the audience here from this? No, okay, making sure.
And Matt, could you just come forward? Matt Weber, our assistant city engineer, has been working on this project for the last year, has had conversations. We have an image up here right now of the actual pathway. The acreage that we're proposing to acquire, it's 3/10 of an acre, is that correct? So it's a really
3/700, 3/10, 4/10, close enough.
Small
yes.
amount.
Very small amount.
Acreage. And it's really necessary to connect Smith Park with the Eastwood Drive area and over by Dempsey. Right now, if anybody runs out there, bikes out there, that curve going out to the park is dangerous, and we can get a lot of people and bikes and other folks off that road and onto this path. So that's really what is behind us.
Right, I can share. First of all, good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. A couple of questions that were asked, good questions over the past year and a half, is if they sell us or we acquire the easement, will they be able to cross that easement or that bike path with a future roadway if they were to develop the land? Of course they can. It's not going to be exclusive where they'd have to buy back rights from the easement. That's probably the most important question. And it doesn't bifurcate their property whatsoever. It's really in an ideal location adjacent to existing right-of-way for Troy Road.
I would like to add just 2 more points. One, The paperwork and the research, Nikki Klum, who's our new prosecutor, has been helping me with this. I just wanted to give her credit where credit's due. She's been working with Matt and me. And then the other thing is, you'll notice in the letter, we had offered one price initially to buy the property. We couldn't get the agreement. We had to get a formal appraisal done. That appraisal came in lower. I think it has to do with the proximity to a sewer. So that's where you might have seen the letter that there's a $10,000 valuation and a $30,000 valuation. When we file our litigation, we have to go with the appraised value. But we've kind of indicated to the attorneys that, if we get in the court and the other thing's going to get it done, we can go higher once we're there. But that's why you see the two numbers and why it looks kind of complicated.
What's the time period, Darren? Once you file, if we approve this evening,
If we approve this evening, I'll have Nikki, who actually comes to the Attorney General's office, and she worked with the ODOT section that did a lot of their taking, so she'll help me draft up the actual court paperwork. The part about the quick take is the way it works, and Matt probably has some experience with this. We would take possession pretty soon, and then the court would move forward, and we'd basically be haggling over price or litigating over price. I don't anticipate it being a really adversarial process there, but we would get the property a lot faster than we would under normal taking because we take possession quickly, and then the rest would be just figure out how much to pay for it. Matt, do you have any other insights on the timeline? Or
Well, that would allow us as well to bid the project in the prime bidding season, which is January, February of 16. That way it gives, we get interest from all different size contractors if we bid projects that time of year. So we're trying to be budget conscious as well and sell it at the right time.
so I was concerned with, it'll be in the 216 budget then.
Yes.
Any other questions? Mr. Shulman, Mr. Weber?
I move to enact Resolution 15-51.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mr. Hilliard. Any further discussion? You're thinking.
I am.
I
because
know, I can tell.
I'm so uncomfortable with the eminent domain part of this. I've said that from the beginning. But I'm split right down the middle because it's necessary. I can see,
Safety and welfare.
and I can see that. And there's part of me that's arguing that if the people who own this want to argue with each other, then they have the right as property owners to do that. And so I guess someone.
Well, I mean, not to cut you off, but.
No, I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
so, they have the right to do that up to a certain point, and we've been trying to purchase this property now since January of 14, right?
Early 2014.
Yeah.
I think my
So-
first phone call was in late January.
So I think it's been a year and a half, and we haven't been able to get a straight answer. It doesn't seem that any of them are per se opposed to the sale. And I think it's the whole point of having the ability to appropriate property is so that we can move forward with public right-of-way type projects just like this. So I think this is an entirely appropriate use of this tool, this statutory tool that we have in our toolbox to keep public business moving along.
Mr. Holman, in any of the conversations that you had with property owners, was there a hint of any property owner that said, we don't want a bike path? Was it solely about the argument between the property owners, or was it about a concern that they had about they didn't want a bike path on their land?
Well,
or-
Matt actually did touch on, and sorry to interrupt, I just had this conversation. Matt did touch on one of the issues. One of the owners said, yeah, I want to sell it to you, but why are you going to build a bike path if I'm going to develop and want to have this road there and you're just going to go over it? But as Matt said, that doesn't stop them from building the road. And I think Tom can give you some comment. That road that he's talking about isn't going to be built for a really long time.
That was the only concern raised. What's the development potential of the property that's east of Troy Road? And that happens to be the most challenging piece to develop because there's a railroad there.
Right.
The piece to the west, the majority of the acreage was slated, has been platted, but that's a property that's probably going to develop first. But it's mostly, Lisa, the access issue. I mean, this would be a different matter, I think, if it was an adverse takings, where you had somebody who clearly did not want something to occur and was holding out, and the famous New London case in New London, Connecticut, where the city wanted to do an economic development project. The lady was in a house. She did want to sell the house, and it was a big Supreme Court case. This this is one of the few that I've been involved in where the family, there's 6 property owners, 3 of whom are siblings, the other 4 of whom are siblings, the other 2 are cousins to the siblings. And it's complicated because they all have a different interest and perspective on the property. And
So was that one property owner's concerns about the bike path, were you able to allay them when you said, I mean, chances are if they developed that area anyway, we would require a bike path as part of the development?
Well, that's the irony, is a couple of them even acknowledged openly that, hey, this is something that's being built for us. If we ever go to develop, we'd have to do this ourselves, right? Yes.
Okay.
On one side or the other. So, again, the main concern was, will we be able to cross the bike path? And absolutely, yes, they will be able to. Not 10 times, but
Okay.
one logical or 2 logical access points, yes.
Okay.
I can give you, maybe if it makes you feel a little bit better, you know, this process, what normally happens according to Nikki is we'll file this litigation and we'll ask for a mediation. That mediation is the opportunity to try to resolve this amicably. I think it would probably get done then, hopefully. But, you know, if I get any feedback at the mediation that says we don't want to sell this, I can come back to council and we always can, you know, withdraw the case if that's something council feels strongly about, because I share your feelings about taking someone's property that doesn't want to sell it. I don't think that's present here, but we will have opportunities throughout the litigation to update you and give you assessments on where things are going, if that gives you any comfort.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so we have a motion on resolution 15-51 by Mr. Brush, a second by Mr. Hellinger. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 10 is consideration of ordinance 15-107. Thank you, Mr. Weber.
Ordinance number 15-107, an ordinance supplementing the 2015 appropriations ordinance to provide funding for the design, construction, and installation of exhibits for the educational center at the water treatment plant.
Mrs. Parker.
Okay, thank you.
Presentation?
Yes, absolutely. Brad Stanton couldn't be here this evening, and so since I have some familiarity with water treatment plant, I told him that I could step in for him. This is simply an ordinance asking council to supplement the 2015 appropriation ordinance in order to fund the educational center that's been planned for the new water treatment plant. And we planned for the educational piece of this since the inception of the water treatment plant. And this would pay for the design and installation of the educational interactive pieces. We currently are estimating to have the whole plan done, it would be about $100,000. The city has in their 2015 budget $50,000 set aside, and we have received grants and donations from various companies totaling $35,000. We will not allow the design company. We will only allow them if this passes to do up to $85,000 worth of work. We have other commitments from other companies that are interested in being a part of this project and being a donor, and we're just waiting for their monies to come in. So this is just money that's already at the foundation, and we just need to appropriate it so that we can proceed with the installation of the exhibit.
Very good. Any questions?
The other thing just to mention is that we may receive additional sponsorships and donations, and if we do, then we would increase the overall, come back to City Council and increase the exhibit space.
Right.
And what is the wish of council?
I move we suspend rules on 15-107.
I have a motion by Mr. DeGenova, a second by Mr. Brush. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
I move for the approval of ordinance 15-107 as submitted.
Second.
Motion by Mr. DeGenova, second by Mr. Brush. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes. Motion carries.
Thank you.
And item 11 is the second reading of ordinance 15-106. The clerk will please read this into the record.
Ordinance number 15-106. An ordinance approving a preliminary development plan for Speedway for an approximate 4,608 square foot gas station and convenience store on approximately 12.912 acres located at the northwest corner of US 23 North and Hills Miller Road on property zoned B4 General Business District.
Thank you. Mr. Epler, you can watch Disney again?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I was waiting to see if Disney came back on there, but IT director gave us some assistance, and so we have the PowerPoint for you this evening. We'll go through this as a staff review, and then the applicant can present what they have to present this evening as well. So I'm going to do this as expeditiously as possible, but as thoroughly as possible. You have all of the information in your packet and site plan. You've been privy to all of the information from Planning Commission, as well as numerous communications from many different folks. This is really a summary overview for you at this time, as I usually produce per your wishes, slightly more detail for obvious reasons as well. So the five kind of big issues when we sat down and thought about this presentation this evening can really be categorized in terms of land use and zoning, environmental, site design, building design, and traffic and engineering. So let's just get right to it and go through these as quickly as possible. The site obviously is located at the corner of Hills Miller and US 23. The one property being an exception is the property known as the Obies piece, which is immediately at the corner and is not in the city. It's in the township and zoned under township zoning. The zoning of the site is B4, General Commercial Business District. So that brings us to the first of the major points, and let's talk about these for a second. These are points that have been raised throughout the process, in addition to points and questions being raised at the last council meeting. As I go through this presentation, you'll see all of these being brought forward to you, is my hope this evening. So land use and zoning, the proposed use is a gas station under our current code. B4 General Business District is the district that this property is in. Since it was annexed in 1968, has been zoned for general business since that time, and in B4 condition substantially since about 1991. That permits a wide variety of uses. You can see them up here, including gas stations, yes, full regular truck stops, drive-through uses, hotels, motels, retail and personal service, veterinary hospitals, and the full range of automobile-oriented uses as well. The site is approximately 13 acres in size and could accommodate not only a wide variety of uses, but quite a footprint of any or a combination of these uses as well. So what's the process? The process in play here today is development plan review only. The use is permitted under the B4 zoning district. Therefore, no zone change is required, no comprehensive plan amendment is required, no conditional use is required, only development plan review. That typically happens, and it'll happen in this case, assuming it progresses through a preliminary development plan review. That's what's before you this evening, and then to a final development plan review process. And that would conclude the pre-development process. Just to let you know, the 13 acres of the site, to give you some context of size, is approximately the same size as all the outlots combined of the Glenwood Common Shopping Center. So it's a large piece of property, is the point. Aerial photograph should be needed and reference it, but you can see a couple of more open spaces on this site, and obviously quite a number of places on this site that are heavily wooded and heavily treed. And we'll make reference to this as we go along. The second of the major issues brings us to environmental issues and items that have been raised through the process. Number one, what we heard early on and throughout most of the process is how is the proposed use, quote, contained, or another way to think about that is what prevents this use from going in and then getting bigger in area over time. It is, again, 13 acres. The applicant proposes to only build on 4.8 of the acres, of the 13 acres, and also proposes a 3-acre permanent conservation easement in this case that is voluntary. They're volunteering that site for permanent conservation easement in part to address this issue. And let's talk about that for a second. It is voluntary for a permanent conservation easement. They certainly do not have to do that, and I think that's to their credit that they've brought that forward. 3 acres initially. We'll show this graphically in a few slides. But at Planning Commission, we did have some discussion about additional acreage that might be available for the permanent conservation easement down the west side of the property. And the applicant agreed that that's something that they could do with the final development plan submission. So it would likely be in excess of 3 acres and down the west side and the balance of the north side of this property. This would also protect the area for major trees. Major trees under our code are any tree over 6 caliper inches at breast height. That would result in about 2,500 caliper inches of qualifying major trees being permanently preserved and protected with this development plan as preliminarily proposed. It also preserves and protects the higher sloped areas and, of course, the water course areas, the major streams in the area. And there is one to the north of the proposed construction site here, and we had some comment at Planning Commission to ensure that that can continue to remain, of course, this site, at least not be any more disruptive to properties to the west. And another major item that we heard with respect to environmental was a whole issue of just fueling stations and fuel tanks underground and this sort of thing. That is regulated by the state building code. We obviously have control of qualifying state building department here. We do the reviews, we do the inspections, but that falls under state building code essentially, and Speedway can talk to this a little bit more in detail if they would like, but it's double wall tank construction. They're alarmed for any leakage with automatic shutoffs, and there are daily reports that are filed with state and federal agencies with respect to that issue. So let's look at the site plan a little bit. This was in your packet. This was the same thing we looked at Planning Commission. And what we're showing here in green is the 3-acre conservation area. Let me orient you for a second. To the right of this slide, on the right side is north, and on the top part of this slide is to the west. The 3-acre conservation easement shown in green here. The yellow shows you the parking and pavement areas of the proposed about 4 acres of the site being developed. And then we have 2 blue pieces which show you towards the 23 side, approximately 7 pump islands for passenger vehicles and 3 pump stations to the rear of the what's shown in green, which is a small convenience store, but 3 pump islands for oversized vehicle diesel fueling, truck fueling, if you will. What it also shows you, I think, is very clearly on this site plan, and this is an answer to a question brought forward last time, there are no dedicated spaces for oversized vehicle parking on this site. That is not atypical for Speedway to have oversized vehicle parking on a site such as this, off to the side or what have you. In this case, they are not proposing that. Again, that would be allowed under the current zoning, but they're not proposing to do that at this time. Trucks can maneuver these drive aisles and maneuver around the site, as can passenger vehicles, but it's been designed really to the minimums of that to ensure that trucks cannot pull over in a drive aisle without essentially blocking that drive aisle. And again, Speedway can talk to that. And that's really a nod to trying to make sure that if trucks or RVs or oversized vehicles are coming, they can fuel, they can use the store, and then they get in their vehicle and they go about their way. There are 32 parking spaces shown for cars around the side and the front of this particular store as well. So let's go back to the major issues for a second. And site design, that's primarily what we're here to discuss in a preliminary way. The site has really been designed in a very conservative fashion, really by Speedway, and I think a lot of these are to their credit. They have no oversized vehicle parking spaces, as I just noted. They're allowed by code, but they're not including those in this submission. They volunteered for no overnight parking of trucks. Again, this would be allowed by code, but they volunteered that. There are only really 3 oversized pump stations for oversized vehicles. The site, as you can see, at 13 acres and what they're proposing to develop could accommodate far more than that. The access drive on Hills Miller, there's been no confusion at the staff level or the planning commission level on this, but there still seems to be some confusion amongst others on this particular issue, and we'll show you a diagram later if you prefer it in that format. But it will actually be east of the single-family apartments, which are to the south of Hills Miller, essentially across from this site. It'll be to the east of those single-story apartments. The 2 easternmost, I think this is important to note, the 2 easternmost apartments on that side of the road have no first floor windows on the Hills Miller side as well. So when we get to the diagram, bear that in mind. Essentially what this means is that the access drive on Hills Miller from the Speedway site will line up with commercially zoned property to the south. The so-called 84 lumber piece, the Amato piece, which are undeveloped at this time, but can provide backage road and other access considerations. Therefore, lining up the Speedway drive with any drive over there as well, if that's ever to develop. And that's per the engineer's recommendation and typical site planning for access. And Matt Weber can go into that a little bit more in detail later. So some more words for you before the diagram, but site design, again, it's been conservatively approached. I think Speedway has heard the concerns and is trying to address all of them and do really what I would consider to be a responsible development on this site, given the zoning of the site. The use is oriented to US 23. It's placed by and large in existing open space as much as practical. There are significant additional setbacks. Code requires 50 feet from Hills Miller Road and 50 feet from the west property line to meet our base zoning code, which is all they have to do under the code and under this process. Right now, we'll show you this in diagrammatic form. There's 400+ foot setback from Hills Miller Road as shown today, and 186-foot setback from the west property line to the diesel pump use. Additionally, to the access drive, which is located to the west of the basic use of the site, the closest point to that west property line from that access drive is about 116 feet. Access drives can be arranged immediately on the property line, or if you like to use the parking setback, you can think of it as a 20-foot setback. But access drives are typically set sometimes right on the property line, depending on the site. So those are significant setbacks. There's heavy existing vegetation to the west and to the north. And in part, we went over this before with respect to the conservation easements. The anticipated final planting plan, and we've gone over this with Speedway for several months at this point, really includes some low mounding and some evergreen trees in that southwest corner. They've supplied a landscaping plan with this preliminary package. They don't even have to supply that with a preliminary package. And so going into final, those are some things, and that is an area of the site that does not have a lot of existing trees. It is more proximate to the apartments across Hills Miller Road and makes sense for some low mounding and some evergreen tree planting, as we've done in many, many other conditions, and that's been communicated to Speedway for quite some time. The other point I want to make here is that the grade to the west is certainly rolling. It's up and down. But there are many places that are actually higher in grade than the subject site, and significantly higher. And so when you're talking about buffering and mounding to things that aren't exactly on the same grade with an adjacent site that is higher, you have to consider that when you're talking about those particular considerations. The site to the west currently is vacant. It may or may not be developed in the future. It may or may not be developed under the current zoning that's on that site. Somebody may seek a zone change. Site would also have to include setbacks and buffering as well, not unlike any other development that we process in the city. It is currently zoned multifamily for that property to the west. Again, you'll see that on the diagram coming up. And the primary source of noise for this entire area and really the corridor along US 23, anywhere in the city, is actually US 23 itself. The primary source of noise in all of that corridor is the US 23 roadway. For those reasons, staff would not recommend any kind of formal sound wall for those reasons and the previous reasons, and it's not required by a code in this case. So let's take a look at the landscaping plan closely, and you can see what some of the things that we were describing. Again, the orientation is the same as the previous diagrams. Would show you here that, and note for you that there is a city water utility easement along the perimeter of this property. It's a water main that goes down Hills Miller Road in US 23. That creates additional setback that has to happen to have building not occur within that easement, except for some access driveways that go cut across that easement. That also pushes the landscaping material back the width of that easement. Hopefully you've looked in your packet. You can see on this diagram that all of the landscaping required, in addition to the conditions we have noted in your ordinance, would be provided for front yard trees and street trees. Additionally, there are about 1,200 caliper inches of trees that would be coming out of this site. Over 200 caliper inches of trees would be replanted on this site, not including street trees and front yard trees and other required trees. That's additional trees. You can see that on this diagram. But you can also see in the southwest corner of this site an opportunity for some of that mounding and evergreen planting right in this location as well. Gateway and corridor plan elements would be included, and you see those noted in your conditions. Speedway is aware of those, including the landscaping elements, the signage elements, and the materials, and including some stone piering along US 23 as well. It's worth noting that the balance of the caliper inches in terms of removal of trees would be paid at this point. Preliminarily, Speedway would pay that to the city tree fund, and it's about $100,000 at this point. So Speedway has prepared a new exhibit here to try to put this in a little bit of context, show a lot of the elements that I just went over in textual form, and I think that are kind of hard to see when you just zoom into an individual site plan, and if you're not familiar with reading site plans and that sort of thing. So they've zoomed out and they've really put it in the context of the 13-acre site, as you can see here outlined in red. You can see the driveway going in the access drive, the private access drive coming here to Hills Miller Road and being adjacent and across from the 84 lumber piece and the Amato piece. Here are the apartments and the start of the apartments, the easternmost ones. The driveway does not line up with those apartments. It lines up with these commercially zoned pieces. You can see the right in, right out on 23 and the three basic components of this site. You can see how much of the site just visually would be in conservation easement here as well. I think it helps give you a sense of scale and context. And I know it's hard to see contours on here, but you certainly can look at your packet to note the changing and rolling terrain over here, but some of the significant high points of this property over here, which is generally higher than property to the east as you move towards the river. Wanted to note for you here that the setbacks are indeed generous. I don't know if you can see them on here, so I'll just read them out to you. But from the west property line to the closest point at the truck fuel parking is about 186 feet. From that west property line to the closest point of development, which ends up being the parking lot near the convenience store, is about 281 feet. And from the closest point of the fuel canopy over to the closest edge of the apartments towards the development site is about 514 feet away, which is significant. The setback of the fuel canopy from Hills Miller Road is about 411 feet away. I think this visually shows you what I was explaining in words just a moment ago, and Speedway again has produced this and can talk to that exhibit in a little more detail. I did want to note the question came up last time with respect to Exhibit B in the traffic study showing some of these access points in a different location. And in fact, the is a proves a point of what we said from the beginning, that the traffic study was actually conducted ahead of the site planning. This is very typical. It needs to know how much traffic is generated, where it turns, how turns happen. And Matt Weber can go into this in more detail in a few minutes. But this is a change to those diagrams, and they really are diagrams in Exhibit B of the traffic study. In Exhibit B, those diagrams are really trying to express the turning movements and not necessarily the diagram or access points. This is where the access points will be as preliminarily proposed. So let's look at the building design very quickly. The building design is really a small store, approximately 4,600 square feet. To give you a sense of scale and context, this came up again at Planning Commission. That's about 600 square foot larger than the Troy Road Speedway that was just redeveloped. This is not prototypical Speedway design. It's definitely an upgraded design. They include mansard roofs for the store and the canopies. Dormer and shed windows were added to the front elevation. The canopy sign band is a non-traditional tan color. The building materials are brick and cultured limestone that has been approved many, many times by this council for lots of developments in the city. The gateway and corridor plan landscaping elements have been added and will be added going into final as we've gone over. The signage is really pretty limited for what they would be allowed to do by code on this site. And the site lighting, and by the way, the signage and even the elevations are not required to be submitted at a preliminary stage. But Speedway went ahead and did that so they could show you kind of the quality of the design of what they're thinking about and looking for any feedback. But site lighting would be typically fully recessed and cut off per our codes anyway, and can be shielded in the event that that may need to occur. This is in your packet. Everybody's seen this, I think, at this point. This is just a visual representation of those elements that I just went over. Leave that up there for just a second, but you can see those elements. So traffic and engineering, let's get to the last phase of this. And I think really this has been probably the most major of the major issues as we've discussed these. And as I've heard public comment and why the traffic study took months and months and months and was very carefully contrived and gone over by our engineering staff. But from a macro perspective, access is managed, and that's per our own thoroughfare plan and our previous approvals and ODOT access management to be consolidated around signalized intersections and utilizing backage roads as is proposed. There's a private backage road here with easements for future connection to the north. As is, I'm going to skip ahead just for a second and come back, a bike path connection, which is shown on our bike path plan in this general area, and that's shown being built on the plan, and then with easements and future connection to the north again to ensure that that can be connected. Let's talk a little bit about some of the pedestrian connections in terms of sidewalks. There's a sidewalk shown on the Hills Miller side of the plan, and there is a sidewalk shown on the US 23 side of the plan. You'll note in the staff report that we asked the question of Planning Commission, ultimately of you, City Council, whether you want to change your longstanding policy now to not have sidewalks along US 23, where it can be avoided and provide other pedestrian connections. Make sure that we have the right-of-way and or easements required for future connections should the city really grow and develop in a much more of an urban area in this location. We certainly don't have the room to put those pedestrian connections in there if it were to make sense. And Planning Commission gave general feedback and direction that that they agree the sidewalk should not be along US 23, but we should secure right-of-way and or easements necessary for future connection as we have with others. And perhaps payment in lieu of that sidewalk be made to the city to produce other sidewalk connections around the city. There are a number of enhancements to US 23 and the intersection of 23 and Hills Miller Road, including the widening of Hills Miller Road and a dedicated turn lane on Hills Miller. There's a final traffic study at this point, and there were some specific questions raised at the last meeting. And at this point, I would turn it over to Matt Weber to really elaborate as much as he cares to on traffic and the traffic study and the questions raised from the last meeting. And Matt, this is your diagram. If you want the full site, let me know, and I can
That should
click
work.
to that.
That should work, Dave. Hello again. What I'd like to do, two things I'd like to accomplish. I'd like to walk you through real quick the existing conditions at the intersection of 23 and Hills Miller. And after that, I would like to, if it's your wish, I'd like to read some recent correspondence, some Q&A that we've done through email regarding various traffic issues surrounding the site. So we'll start out with the existing diagram here. You'll see that north is to the top of the page. That's the old gas station there, top left corner of the photograph. The northbound left turn lane is basically all the lanes are barely meet ODOT standards today. Some of them are borderline substandard. And we've heard a lot about how the intersection needs improvement, and we completely agree the intersection needs improved. This intersection is not anywhere on our radar on our capital plan. I don't even think it would make probably the top 15. So there is no doubt there's improvement to be done here. Speedway is proposing as part of their development to widen US 23 to accommodate, for the most part, 12-foot lanes all the way across. We may have to shrink one to 11.5, depending upon final design. But the study definitely shows that we need to do some safety improvements, and I'd categorize those as safety improvements, as well as some operational improvements. So I think the most important improvements to 23 that are going to occur with this development are the widening of the lanes across the board. You'll notice as Hills Miller approaches 23, it's very important to note there's only one outbound lane, and eventually that signal will fail in its operation as years go by with just one outbound lane. So with or without Speedway, there needs to be a project conceived to separate the lanes of traffic outbound. What that does is that allows us to shorten the time given to Hills Miller, and we can give that time during the signal operation to some other movement. And with this project, I think it's a foregone conclusion we're going to be adding some time for the northbound left turn movement into the site. It really intuitively makes sense. We'll study that as part of the final signal timing. But Speedway is also proposing to add those two outbound lanes. So basically, we'll be separating traffic heading east into a right turn lane or a left turn lane only. They're going to widen, they've committed to widening Hills Miller Road to a 3-lane section all the way back to their proposed access point. Hills Miller, there's no doubt Hills Miller Road is not structurally capable of handling additional truck traffic. So Speedway is proposing to tear out and rebuild that entire section of roadway from US 23 to their entranceway. The study is complete. Traffic study, what that study does is it sets parameters for the design. Design is not complete, so I can't sit here and tell you that turn lanes are going to be exactly 325 or 330 feet long in this direction or that direction. Important note that I want to emphasize is we think it's a solid piece of engineering work. We've approved it. We've given a lot of input on the parameters of this study. We spent a lot of time reviewing and working and communicating with the consultant, going through iterations. This study basically represents a traffic model. I don't think you want me to walk you through the study tonight. We'll be here for another hour or two. So I'm here to assure you that it's a good study with one major typo in the introduction. That states the ADT traffic on 23 is 17,000 vehicles, when in actuality it's 34,000 vehicles. I can assure you the model is set up properly with the larger number of vehicles. It was clearly a typo in the executive summary of the study. So that's probably going to be one of the questions you might, or one of the comments you might hear in public comment tonight. If I may, I'd like to read some recent questions from the last meeting and questions that have come in since the last meeting. And without sounding robotic, I don't want to paraphrase our answers, because we put a lot of time in drafting our answers. So that being said, the first question we got, or comment we got, is the report is flawed using wrong traffic volumes. This comment has been addressed several times. There is a typographical error in the report listing the total US 23 ADT as 17,000 vehicles per day, where in fact all traffic analysis, i.e. the model, utilized the accurate estimate of 34,000 vehicles per day. Any follow-up questions on that? No. The gross traffic rate is incorrect, is the comment we received. The answer is the 1.75% conservative growth rate was developed directly working with MORPC staff, Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, MORPC staff, the leading agency regarding traffic counting and modeling in the Central Ohio region. So we're very confident in the growth rate we used in the model. The study assumed opening day in 2015. Because proposed improvements are based on the estimated traffic volumes during the peak travel hours, 20 years from now, the impact is negligible in regards to final geometric design parameters included in the final approved plans. Truck counts are too low. In fact, the percentage of truck movements included in the study was set at 20%, or excuse me, set at 10%, a very conservative figure and likely much higher than actual percentages at times. The high percentage was utilized to be very conservative in certain items such as turn lane length design, signal timing, etc. Question, is Hills Miller Road too narrow? And our answer is both the developer and the city understood this from the project onset, which is why significant and costly improvements to Hills Miller are included with the project. Hills Miller would be reconstructed from US 23 to a point of a proposed entrance off Hills Miller. The reconstructed road will include 12-foot wide lanes and include a dedicated 250 to 300-foot long left turn lane extending from the site entrance to US 23. The stacking length could queue 3 or 4 semi-trucks concurrently. Those would be WB67s. It's a engineering lingo term. Trucks run red lights was the comment we received. Our answer is this comment has been forwarded to the local police department. It's a behavioral issue. It really is. Speed limit on US 23. Here to assure you that the city has reached out to ODOT regarding the speed limit on the section of highway directly north of the intersection to better understand what options exist regarding changes or reduction in the posted speed. Additional information will be made available as we receive direction. All improvements are being conservatively designed to the current posted speed limit. And we had some questions on design details. Our response is the traffic study is completed to provide guidance and recommendations as to what level of improvements, i.e. turn lanes, pavement widenings, signal adjustments, will be required of the development. To date, there has not been a submission of the complete highway improvement engineering plans. This is normal as developers do not typically authorize the completion of costly detailed engineering improvement plans until they have received planning and zoning approval for their respective projects. When plans are developed, the exact details of turn lane lengths, turn radii, pavement expansion widths, and pavement composition will all be discussed and reviewed with the engineering division staff. And then late today, I was asked one additional question: is it viable to rearrange the proposed access for Speedway to have a new traffic signal added north of Hills Miller? And our answer is no, that's not viable. Signal spacing would be way too close to the existing signal at Hills Miller, and you need a certain amount of square footage of commercials or commercial space in this case to warrant a signal, and it's not even close with the Speedway development. The only way to achieve that would be, and this is not practical, but to take down the signal at Hills Mill and relocate it to the north, and I don't think that would fly the community.
So with that, I think staff would recommend approval. Your planning commission did recommend unanimous approval coming out of a couple of hearings on the process, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions on the answers that Mr. Weber read tonight? Okay, any questions for staff at this time? All right, thank you very much. And we'll have the applicants come forward.
Okay.
Good evening. You know the routine. I need your name and address for the record, please.
Chris Warshaw, 395 Springside Drive, Akron, Ohio.
My name is Brian Witt. I work with Speedway. Address is 500 Speedway Drive, Enon, Ohio, 45323.
Thank you.
So a lot of the stuff I'll go over might be a little redundant to start, but I'll try and give a little bit of our take on it as well. Again, here's your aerial photo of the site. As you can see, it's a pretty heavily wooded site. There are two streams that kind of run north and south along the western property line, and then there's one that runs east and west along the, there's one that runs north and south along the west property line, the ones that runs east and west along the north property line. Both of those will be in the that permanent conservation easement, so there will be no impacts to those streams as part of this development. And then also in future developments, because they'll be covered by that conservation easement. On the site plan, again, out of the total acreage of the site, only about 4.8 acres of it will be disturbed as part of this development. It still shows 3 acres up there, but there will be an additional 1.3, I think is the number, to continue that easement along the western property line, which on this plan would be the top part of the site. The store itself is a 4,600 square foot retail store. It's essentially the same store that's already in off of Troy and Central. What it has just a little bit more space. It has a little more room to prepare food because there is additional lanes on the store. A bigger store is warranted for this one, just to provide some additional food service. There'll be more than one toilet in it, so there'll be a little more space for people to use facilities. Again, to kind of follow up with what Mr. Eflin said, there'll be 7 what we call auto fueling dispensers. They're of those dispensers, I think off the top of my head, 3 of them will be what we call a 3+1. So they'll have your mid, regular, premium, and then also most likely either diesel or flex fuel. The other 4 will be just your regular, mid-grade, and premium dispensers. So if somebody's driving, a 3500 Silverado without a trailer on the back, they could pull up to the front and they could use those just as any other passenger vehicle would. And that's very common across any gas station you go to, is to have that diesel capability in that front canopy. The rear canopy, to kind of give everyone a little bit of a sense of how that's oriented, the way that works is that there actually looks like there's 4 islands for vehicles to fill at, but diesel or commercial trucks actually have tanks on both sides of their cab. So it's really only one-way traffic in there. So there's 3 bays for a vehicle to fuel at that time. They'll come in, they'll pay on the left, and they'll use the other side. It's called satellite dispenser and that. So they'll put both hoses into both sides of their cab and fill at the same time. It just speeds up the process as opposed to having just one at a time. The way the traffic flow would work is that the traffic would more or less move in a counterclockwise fashion. So as a truck is filling, it would be facing north. So instead of it, I think originally when we came up, and we have kind of stuff that we've worked through with staff as we've refined the site plan of this. That is originally we showed that we actually had the trucks facing the other direction. And then as we got more detailed into the design, working with kind of looking at the overall plan and the overall site, knowing that there's the residential houses, the canopy got flipped. So now trucks are facing the other direction. So if a truck's got its lights on, just sitting there filling up, or if it's waiting behind, or if it's pulled forward and is in the store, lights are facing north. And those are your stagnant lights of just a truck sitting or waiting. And then as it would leave, if the truck is traveling northbound, it would actually continue that counterclockwise motion and head out that full access driveway on Hills Miller and then go back out to the light. If it's going southbound, it has the ability to make the right turn right there and come out of that right in, right out driveway. So again, these are all things that we've gone through pretty thoroughly with the city planning staff to make sure that the impact to the adjacent development, adjacent residential and potential residential developments is minimized. Just a few other things. The site will have 24-hour operations, and there will be 34 regular vehicle parking spots. Those are just your 9x18 parking spots for just a regular passenger vehicle. And again, there's no truck parking. One of the things that kind of got brought up earlier during the planning process was, what happens if a truck does stop? Well, that'll be something that Speedway will go ahead and manage. If it does become an issue, there'll be signs that'll be posted, and they'll call local law enforcement if they have to get somebody off their site. There really is no spot for a vehicle, an oversized vehicle, to park. Truck drivers, it's all about time and money for those guys. So if you have a truck that pulls forward and sits there and is like, I'm just going to take a long 1-hour break here, chances are there's another truck behind them that's pushing them out of the way. It's like you're at a normal gas station. You pull up to that pump and you think you're the next one in line, and then you see the guy walking to the store. You're pretty upset. It's the same thing with those guys. They're not going to let them just sit there for an hour or so and park overnight in front of a dispenser and behind a dispenser. They need to get through. So there's really no true spot for them to kind of camp out. This is kind of the same thing that Mr. Eflin had shown and discussed. Again, you can kind of see how the overall site is laid out. You can kind of see a little bit, and it's kind of hard to point on the screens. You can't do it. But you can kind of see a little bit of where the two streams are kind of going the north and south and the east and west, and kind of just see from the tree lines a little bit. As we get into and further refine the design going through final engineering plans, we'll work with city staff to make sure that the impact to those is as minimal as possible. I shouldn't say minimal as possible, so that we don't impact them at all. So there might be some slight changes, but again, the changes would be minimal to what you're seeing right now, and we'll work through that before we get to final design. A little bit of the property breakdown. I say the property is 12 acres, and we say we're developing 4.8 or having 4.8 land of disturbed acreage. And a lot of stuff, a lot of comments we get, or a lot of people just kind of question saying, well, what's happening to the other acreage? So I just want to kind of just quick little breakdown. This property is actually kind of an old property style in the sense that the property lines actually go to the center of the roadway. So there's a lot of property that is just purely tied up in public roadway. And so by the time we get done with this, we'll actually have this land replatted so that that land is actually given to the city. And then there's more or less a defined right-of-way, and that property would be City of Delaware owned. So there's within right-of-way and current easements, there's about 2.74 acres of land. And then as you can see, out of that rest of that, the undisturbed, you get out to 4.28 acres of land. And there's going to be about 4.28 acres of land that we'll dedicate to conservation easements and cross-access easements. On the building design, there is a fair amount of upgraded features to this. A lot of things that we did on this site is also in line with what has been done out at the Troy Central site, but with some further architectural upgrades. Some of the things you'll notice on here are the dormers on the top, the roof on the canopy. The other thing is the band across in the front on the fascia of the canopy. Usually what Speedway does is an aluminum band that they kind of just place up there. And a lot of times you'll see them has like a gray stripe. The one on Troy I think is just plain white. This one's actually have a stucco finish. So it's just, again, just an upgraded look and feature of that store. As we currently have the landscaping shown, you can see we really paid attention towards that, tried on the first round of this, on the screening to the residential properties, kind of with some, I think we have 3 rows of shrubs intermixed with trees. We'll work with the city staff in making that even better with the use of mounding and putting some evergreen trees up there so that we can really minimize whatever lights may be shining as they come up that backage road. Again, with the traffic study, one thing I would like to kind of just say upon this, I won't go into some of the recommendations, we've already discussed it, but the traffic study has been reviewed and approved by ODOT, the City of Delaware, and the county. So a lot of things in the study might say 2014 or 2015, and that's because it took a long time to get through this process. But as we move forward, the project will probably be built in 2016, so we're not too far off on the time frames. Some of the alcohol and tobacco sales, All the employees will be certified and trained on how to properly identify and sell alcohol and tobacco. Again, they'll teach them how to check IDs, and 30 years and younger will all be checked. Moving on to some of the safety and security highlights. There's throughout the store itself on the inside, as well as the exterior of the site, there's numerous security cameras that will be going on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And roughly between 60 and 32 cameras will be on this site. So there'll be pretty good visibility as to what's going on. A lot of the cameras are going to be positioned to the checkout area, as safety inside the store. There'll also be additional cameras on the truck area, the fueling tanks, the driveway entrances. So in case something were to happen, it could be recorded. And those cameras are all monitored 24 hours a day in Speedway security office down in Enid. Another thing on here is that one of the best ways to deter crime on a site like this is to make sure it's well lit. And so within all the areas of the development, there'll be adequate security lighting within the proper zoning code to make sure we don't overlight anything, to make sure that there's not any true dark spots out there where something could happen. So there'll be lighting going around to take care of that. And also on top of the lighting, all the lighting that Speedway uses are LED lights, so they're fully cut off, so there'll be no light spillover onto adjacent properties. As we get into final design, we'll provide a light study for that. Going on to some of the tanks and some of the fuel system safety. The tanks are, as Dave said, the tanks are all double walled, and that's just the first line of defense. There's additional measures, additional sensors that are all being actively monitored at all times of the day and night. So if there were ever an issue or a concern, they have the ability to dispatch somebody out there to take care of it, or to completely shut down the system if they need to. There'll also be emergency stops throughout the site. So in case something were to arise, anybody can go up there and just hit the emergency stop if something were to happen. And so that's all I have at this time. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant?
I had just one, and this may have come up at the staff level, but the consideration of a concrete section on the rebuild of Hills Miller Road, as opposed to just a typical bituminous. I just note that when the county rebuilt Section Line Road from 42, they put in a concrete section, and I think just given the current volume of traffic plus the expected volume of the truck traffic, that type of section I think might be appropriate, but that would be something that we could
look at and file.
Yeah.
We can speak outside the microphone.
That would just be, I don't know if there would be a consideration for that, but I think it might be warranted.
We can take a look at that. I know for one thing, that will be a much more of a heavy-duty pavement section than what you normally what you might have put in on that road normally. So even if we do an asphalt pavement, it will be a much thicker road pavement section than what would be normal.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right, thank you very much. You're awful quiet tonight. Okay, at this time, anybody who did not speak at the last meeting, if you have a question, you can raise your hand and come forward, and we'll hear you. And as you sit down, please give us your name and address for the record. Excuse me? Anybody who did not speak at the last council meeting, we heard from several members. No, anybody that came forward last week? Can you give us your name and address for the record,
Yes,
please?
thank you. Jim Molina, 185 Kensington Drive in Delaware. The only question I have is why, and the city engineer kind of addressed this earlier, but why can't we do a light north of Hills Miller Road where, kind of like there's a Kroger, there's, that's pretty close, between Kroger, there's 2 lights there. If we put a light north of there, making all access in and out for Speedway, and keep the traffic off of Hills Miller Road, that's what all of us are concerned about. The green easement is fine. But that's north of us. Quite frankly, it's not going to make a big difference with what we're concerned about. What we're concerned about is traffic on Hills Miller Road and the safety of turning. Every car or truck that has to go into that gas station going north, has to turn left onto Hills Miller Road and then turn right into the gas station. It doesn't make any sense. And what's going to happen are people, cars mostly, because semi-trucks probably not even going to be able to do this, but they're going to go into the right in, right out and try to turn left into the right in, right out. We just want to keep the semi-trucks off of Hills Miller Road. So if we can take that in consideration, it makes perfect sense to put a light just north of Hills Miller and have 2 lights, sync them up like they do down at Kroger on 23. And I think it's a feasible option. I understand the zoning. It's B4. That makes perfect sense. We're here to, come to some sort of, I'm losing my thought, but, we want to come to an agreement on making this a better plan. And it just seems like the traffic on the Hills Mill Road and the safety part of it has kind of been left on deaf ears. But that's what I wanted to say. I'd hope everybody would please think about that when you do make your decision. I understand that, they have every right to do what they want with the property. It's just try to make it so it works for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Lee, I'm going to have you come sit here, and we're going to time them with a 3-minute. If you'll come sit in Kent's seat for me. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak that did not speak at the last meeting? This is not a public hearing. This is a preliminary.
My name is Kristen Jones. I live at 164 Sylvan Drive. I really appreciate the work that the Planning Commission, the City Council, Speedway has put into this. It's a concern, of course, when you have a whole bunch of residential dwellings close to what feels like an industrial center, and truck refueling is a whole lot closer to industrial than grocery shopping or doing your county business or buying a burger. So there are some distinctions between general business buying a burger and general business refueling a truck. And those are some of the concerns that residents in the area have. I'm really concerned, and I'm not dissatisfied, but my concerns are things about the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. Hey, we pay the bills. We're part of. We're invested with you, and it seems like there's a lot of addressing health, safety, and welfare. Fumes are fumes. Not much you can do about it, but it's distressing if it becomes part of your household. Safety. Well, I can hear you talking and thinking, and I'm not opposed. Those are good things. But the concern about where do you enter and where do you exit and egress, or entrance and egress are big issues. And I'm not dissatisfied. It's not like I'm coming to scream and be angry. I'm only saying that there are all of these places where it was pointed out they're doing more than they have to. They're giving more of a conservation easement than is required. This is, and what can the city council do or say to say, okay, you know, bank, save it at that place? Because my sense is, like the camel who gets his head under the tent. So next week, when we need to just inch a little bit more into the conservation easement, when there aren't enough resting parking spaces at McDonald's for the people that, just happen to spend the night, why, golly, the side of Hills Miller Road could be a place to, just spend the night. And so those are some of those safety and health questions that I have concerns about. You guys have to decide. I'm not going to vote on it. It's not for me to vote. I appreciate your listening, and I appreciate the decision. Thank you.
Mayor, there is a comment from someone who is on a webcast with a sick child. Am I allowed to just read what they have asked since they cannot be here?
Yes.
Okay. I'm speaking for Rich Latham, and he is at 231 Sylvan Drive. He also is a hazmat specialist. He said that number 20 in the packet in the document is currently missing from what you have, that it says it's the staff report that is missing, so that's item 20. He just wanted to point that out, and he wanted to also have me state that MORPC states that is 2% growth, not 1.7 that was just discussed. So he's been texting, and they're very interested, and you've webcammed it, so I just wanted to share.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
This is, what's the petition?
Can you state your name and
Sure.
record?
Yep. Matt Kutchers, 215 Kensington Drive. And I am simply a delivery boy here. But it is a petition from the folks who live at the, what's the name of that place? Yeah, it's the assisted living at the end of Oakhurst. What is it? Not Oakhurst. What's Bruce Road? Yeah. Just wanted to. Who do I give this to?
Thank you very much.
Mr. Kutcher, please spell your last name, please.
K-U-C-H-E-R-S.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? It's coming down your lane. Thank you, Lee. And what is the wish of the council?
Well, before I make a motion here, I just want to say that I appreciate all of the hard work that staff has put into this whole process. I appreciate the work of the Planning Commission, particularly Councilwoman Keller in her capacity as the Planning Commission Chair. Dave, I appreciate your time and your staff's time on this, and the engineering department as well. And I appreciate all the residents from the surrounding area who have followed this issue very closely for the past several months and have come to several late meetings to let your voice be heard. I think that the result that we have is a plan that is probably not perfect in the eyes of anyone in this room, but I think it's a plan that addresses in a material way many of the concerns that were raised. I think that it's a plan, it's certainly a plan that complies with our zoning. And ultimately, that's the question that we have to ask ourselves. Is not, do we want a gas station here? It's, does this proposal comply with the existing zoning? In my judgment, it does. And so with that, I will make a motion to suspend the rules requiring 3 readings of ordinance 15-106.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mrs. Keller. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Abstain.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
And I move to enact ordinance 15-106.
Second.
The motion by Mr. Brush, a second by Mrs. Keller. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Abstain.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. DeGenova?
Yes.
Mr. Brush?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hellinger?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Item 12 is the Finance Director's Report.
I don't know why they're leaving now. It's just getting exciting. The report for the first 3 quarters of the year through the end of September, I believe, was included in your packet. I did put a little bit of summary at the front, kind of highlighting some of the bigger issues, although there's not a lot of unusual things occurring kind of where we thought we would be. I would entertain any questions council may have related to the report.
Any questions? from the
Just have one question. The income tax collections are up 6.13% over where they were at this point last year. How does that compare with what we had budgeted?
We budgeted just slightly less than a 5% increase. It would end up being like 4.9%, something like that.
Thank you.
After that.
Any other questions? Okay, City Manager's Report.
Just a couple of items. We're finalizing the Cicada visit. So if you have a chance to RSVP for the dinner for Sunday night, please do so. We're going to be finalizing those plans on Wednesday of this week, and we'll be getting out a final schedule for everybody for that. So looking forward to that, and that's all I have. We're just working on the budget, and that'll be the subject of the next 3 weeks of our time.
Okay, council comments? Mr. Jones?
You come back to me.
Sure. Mrs. Keller?
I have none, thank you.
Okay. Mr. DeGenova?
I have none.
Mr. Brush?
Nothing, thanks.
Mr. Hellinger?
Hate to break it to you. I got a question for Dave. One word, wayfinding.
One answer, in progress.
Have you seen the polls?
No, I have
The
not.
polls are up,
Oh,
and all we're waiting.
Look out at the edge of the parking lot,
Yeah.
and you'll see. some.
Big blue poles, waiting for the actual the sign
Now-
faces.
Should be, as of now, talking to the sign company last week, I believe, full installs anticipated with the signs by the end of the first week of November. So all the hand digging and is quite a lot of effort to make sure we're hand digging downtown and being.
They really look sharp.
They are
I mean,
going
the
up.
poles themselves, the signs aren't on them yet, but the poles look nice.
Well, we,
Fine looking poles.
10 days before the end of my 8-year tenure on city council, we finally put that issue to bed, one that we were talking about even before I was first elected. So I'm very excited about that.
Very good.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. That it?
Yep.
And I just want to remind you all that we are doing a Veterans Day Parade on November 8th this year. It's a Sunday at 3 o'clock. And our Grand Marshals will be all female veterans. It's a little unusual. We did find an 87-year-old twin sisters who served in World War II who will be there. So please come out and support it. We're also looking for all veterans to be in the parade. So
I know I had one thing, and I know Chris was, I don't know, if you have your.
Yeah, I was just looking in the packet. I knew there was October's calendar. I'm getting myself confused with November's calendar. I was just looking for a quick recap of, there's a Sunday, then there's the 2nd, the 9th, the 16th. I'm just trying to,
So you've got a meeting so you have the Cicada visit week is next Sunday.
which is the 1st.
The 1st. Then Monday evening, there's a special city council meeting, brief city council meeting for a recognition ceremony with Cicada.
Okay.
And then the following Monday is the 9th. That's your regular city council meeting. Then you reorganize on the 26th. 16th, I'm sorry, 16th, and then you have your final November, your second meeting in November on the 23rd.
So it's every Monday.
Yeah, I guess it is every Monday. So you want to meet on the 30th?
Which is fine. There were
Yeah.
so many Novembers, I was getting myself confused.
And speaking of meetings, I'll be getting with Michelle, and she'll be getting with you folks regarding the budget review schedule and end of the year. Our second meeting in December is on the 28th this year, and there's a question of whether we want to try to get it adopted prior to that. I think there's always been that preference as opposed to having a budget meeting after Christmas. So I'll get with Dean tomorrow and figure out what we can, when the earliest it is, we can get it to you for adoption. And I know some of you, yeah, I know a couple of you have mentioned to me, but if you have plans, let us know, and then we can take that into consideration as we set the schedule.
Can we review what time these meetings start?
Yeah, it's really up to, I think in the past, we've started them at 6, sometimes 6:30, sometimes 7. I know.
The council meetings.
Yeah, the regular council meetings would begin per hour 7 o'clock. The organization.
Referring to November 1st, is that?
The meeting on the 2nd is 6:15. The 9th is 7. The 16th is 7.
Which one?
And which one's the 23rd? What time is that one?
That would just be our
That's just a
regular
regular council meeting.
7 o'clock.
But the second is 6:15.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there was one that was, I can't remember which one it was. There's a parking and safety meeting the same night.
That conflicts with one on the 16th. And that was when we're looking at having parking and safety earlier than, like 6 o'clock or 5:30. It was on parking and safety.
I thought we were having it later.
We are. It's scheduled for
Did it get
afterwards.
rescheduled?
Yeah, it's scheduled for 7:30.
Okay, then it's after, I'm sorry, I stand corrected, yeah.
The meeting.
After the organizational meeting, because typically the organizational meeting is housekeeping, and there's some, obviously there's there's committee assignments and that type of thing, so.
Okay, so the one on the 2nd starts at 6:15. The one on the 9th is a regular meeting at 7.
Yes.
The one on the 16th
It's 7.
is 7. And then the one on the 23rd, we're still
It's 7.
deciding.
That would be 7.
It's 7.
7?
Yeah.
Okay.
What we haven't set the budget review meetings that would occur in early December. That's what we still have to do. Last year, we met 3 times in December and adopted the budget on the, we adopted the budget on the 22nd last year, and that happened to be the second meeting of the month, but the calendar doesn't fall that way this year. So the second meeting is after Christmas.
And the dinner is at what time on Sunday the 1st?
I think 5:35.
Okay.
5:30. 5:30 to 5:45. You don't have to be. It's just that it's
I
a,
mean, what time do you want to, you're not going to sit down and eat it.
no, there's a reception at 5:30 till 6:15, I think, or 6:30. And then there's the dinner that follows.
Well, the November 2nd meeting at 6:15, I have 2 other commitments that night.
Yeah, I know there's April Nelson has there's something for her that evening, and I think we're working around that. So I will double check. I think it might be we're flexible, so we can push that meeting back a little. We have to. And I know Andy had,
5:30, correct?
yeah, and a number of you wanted to get there.
I think it's 5:30 to 6:30.
Mhm. Right.
So we push the meeting back by 45 minutes to 6:15, and that should be sufficient.
Right. So if we start at 6:30, we'll be finalizing the schedule this week, so give you enough time to get over there.
Which one?
I have one other comment there.
Yes.
For the media, they have me down as being on council for 8 years. I've been on council for 24 years. It goes back to 1986. And if they could do a correction on that, I'd appreciate it. I've been on and off council for 24 years. I've been on council for 24 years. First thing. Second thing I want to comment on is November 3rd is election. And there is a race for the 4th ward, but the rest of us are all going to be probably elected. We need 1 vote. I'll be working the election night up at the election center. And so So I got a busy week ahead of me. Plus I have a book fair all week at Willis from 8 in the morning until 4 o'clock at night. But anyways, I just make sure everybody votes. I already have.
Okay. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned at 8:42.
Yeah.